If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal cell?
Panther
The
48.
tribal cell is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be
but
willing
I'm
to
talking about
die
the
for.
tribal cell.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unheard.
My premise I'm going to say is that black women have allowed themselves to get weaponized against the community. That's what I'm going to say. Black women have been weaponized against the community, not just against the black man, but against the community. And the premise of this, one of the things I want to go to, and y'all know we had these discussions early on, and I expected a little pushback from y'all, but you know, we talked about Kevin Samuels. We talked about him a lot when he was, alive and pretty popular. And I felt Kevin Samuels. And the reason why I felt his message, because I understood it. It's like you hear somebody talking and and all these other people, he got all the millions of views and all these people, he was so controversial and he got all those thousands of likes and that big fan base. And all these people thought they were subscribing to Kevin Samuels' philosophy. But it's just like if you heard me kicking some stuff Huey said or kicking some stuff Malcolm said, you may agree with it, but since you done read the same books, you automatically know, hey, he's getting that from Revolutionary Suicide. Oh no, that's chapter 8 of the autobiography of Malcolm X. He's building on that concept that Malcolm was building on in the Malcolm X on Afro-American history, because you done read the book. And so that's why I liked Kevin Samuels. Because when I would listen to him, it would instantly strike me as, wait a minute. I've read this thought process before, this theory, these ideals, and it all came from Shahrazad Ali's "The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman." Just about everything Kevin Samuels presented in his on his platform is almost like he took the Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman and actually created a lesson plan out of it, and then represented it as to a new audience as a YouTube platform. And people that had never read the book, that none of the major points struck with them. She got a chapter where she talks about how the feminist movement had corrupted the thinking of black women and had actually led them away from their men. She have a chapter where she builds on that. She talks about women wanting to be free, because we was fighting to be free. We was civil rights movement, then the Black Power movement. So freedom was a big call in our community. The first point on the Black Panther Party's 10-point platform started with freedom. We want freedom. Freedom was a big thing in the black community. And so when black women heard something about being free, when they heard that idea, when they heard that concept, then they ran to the feminist movement, not understanding that black women had never needed to be free from black men, like white women needed to be free from white men. White women had been historically and traditionally oppressed by their men, where black women had not. So black women had identified with the feminist movement irrationally. And she talks about that, and that's one of the things Kevin Samuels talks about, and many, many other points. But my major point that I want to say to start us off in this conversation is that I truly believe that black women have allowed themselves to be weaponized against the community. And this has been one of the number one things that has destroyed the community, because I truly believe that the nucleus of the community, the essence of the community, the center of the community is the black family. And the black family cannot exist without the black man and the black woman having harmony and balance with one another. It cannot exist. When we go into certain sacred teachings and ancient schools of thought, they'll say knowledge represents the man, is one. Two, wisdom represents the woman, which is two. When 1 and 2 come together, it equals 3, which is understanding. Without 1 and 2 coming together, you can never produce an understanding. And so to destroy our understanding, the unity between the man and the woman was destroyed. How do you go in to do that? Let's look at this, and then I'm gonna pass the mic, because I know y'all ready to get in there. But I'm gonna get a little theoretical right quick. How do you do that? Do you go in through the man first, or you go in through the woman first? You go in through the woman first. Why do you go into the woman? Because of the nature of masculine and feminine energy. A woman by nature is to take in and then nurture what was taken in and produce new life out of it. A man's nature is to go in, to penetrate, and then eject the seed necessary to produce life. So you don't go into the man. The part where you plant the seed is the feminine part of the process. The part where the seed is planted is the masculine part of the process. We can even see that in the book of Genesis when we see Adam and Eve. The serpent didn't go to Adam. The serpent went to Eve. And by corrupting Eve's thinking, she was able to then go and subvert Adam's thinking. And this is and when we read scripture, that's one of the things Dr. Khalid once said. I remember him saying this. He said, when you look at scripture, we're not reading scripture to read about what some cat did 2,000 years ago. That would be irrelevant to us. We're reading scripture to look for prototypes. And I think he got that from Farrakhan. When you look at scripture, you got to see yourself, your condition, and your way out of your condition. So we're looking for prototypes. We're looking for ideals, archetypes that could be utilized in today's society. So that's what they did even now. They went in through the woman. Look in the 80s, and I think I've discussed this with you brothers. I don't know if either one of you have ever went through this, but I come from extreme levels of poverty, the ghetto, the slums. And being from that, I come from a household of women who was all on Section 8, who was all on welfare, and I used to watch the men that they dealt with. Whenever the welfare lady would come through, the caseworker would come through, they would make the men hide under the bed. They would make the men hide in the closet. These men would have to hide so that when this white woman walked through, they wouldn't see the man, because if they was to spot the man, they would take the woman's benefits, as she called them. Her free housing, her free food, her free health care, and all other things that came free. And one of the things that we learned when studying economics is there is no such thing as a free lunch. What you have given up is your man, and you have allowed the state to become your man, and now the man has been dehumanized. Even as a kid, I didn't know how to make sense out of it. But one thing I can tell you as an adult that I knew way back then was I had absolutely no respect for a man that was crawling under a bed hiding from a white woman. These things was destroying the concepts and the ideals of the family, and the black woman fell for this hook, line, and sinker. She fell for it, and I just wanted to start it off with that.
Back even further than that, yeah, I want to say it was Chancellor Williams talked about the African woman being the back door to our civilizations, because essentially they've been doing this for hundreds of years. I mean, you look at the Arab, white dudes would come in, and part of their program, it wasn't just they liked to rape black women. They would come in and intentionally get them pregnant and have those sons reared up with them, with the white man, adopting his ways and his mindset. And because our systems of government traditionally are matrilineal, meaning it's a man that sits on the throne out front, but that line of succession goes through the woman. So that's why they call Aset or Isis the throne of Osar, or Heru, excuse me, is because she decides who's going to be king. Yeah, you the king, but I made you the king. She's the original kingmaker. And because now these white boys got somebody who's passed down through this woman, they now have a king being made that's in their image instead of in our own image. And it works the same way. The family is nothing but a microcosm of the bigger macrocosm of government and communities and societies and civilization. You boil it down, what does the family unit look like, and that'll tell you exactly what the overall culture and government and all of that looks like. And it was, like I said, it was the same case traditionally. This is nothing new. They've been doing this for hundreds of years. They come in, plant their seed, and essentially have mammy or whatever you want to call a sister rear the child up. And now he's put his culture, his concept of individuality, of God, of other people, all of that, injected it into our families, the very base unit again of civilization. He's now got a direct lineage into that family, mentally speaking. Not necessarily that he had sex with the woman, but his mindset has now been projected, and she's reflecting it into her children. And that's the understanding that they get, is this skewed, messed up, backward ass, self-destructive mindset of the European, because the European mindset is self-destructive by its very nature. It has to destroy itself. That's just what it does. And so that's what we've taken on, again, through her. Because when you have two males, it's like he's planting the seed in the woman. When you attempt, which is projection, if you attempt to project your seed into a male, you're going to get war. Why? Because you're projecting it into another projection. And so if those two things butt heads, they're naturally opposed to one another. They both want to occupy the same space, and that's why you get war. But when you, like you were saying, when you inject it into the woman's mind, she is for even yes, she receives and wants to nurture. And I've had sisters get upset because someone, you know, in a war in another country or something, there was a 13-year-old with a gun fighting one of these, you know, what they project and what they show to us, some civil war or something, and this 13-year-old with an AK. And so the conversation between us became, you know, killing that 13-year-old with an AK. This is a child. And for her, that trumps everything in that scenario. That empathy, that's a baby. You need to take care of that baby. You can't do that to that baby. Whereas for a man, that's a motherfucker with a gun. Period. If he comes at me with a gun, it doesn't matter how old he is. I'm going to war. And that's one of the reasons sisters don't belong on the front lines, because you can't have empathy and all of that in the midst of a war. You can't go up against your enemy who wants to destroy you and have any feelings of compassion for them whatsoever. And so by having the sisters have that kind of receptive and, oh, baby, come on in, there's always this struggle that we have, even within the community, especially with sisters or with sisters, period, is being nice. You know, that they a lot of times sisters, in my opinion, are too fucking nice to them. You know, you look at the little white baby, oh, that baby is so cute. No, it's not. It's pasty, it's pale, it's pink, it's, you know, got no hair, all of that shit. You know good and well that's not no cute baby child. You're just saying it because the emotion, and I get it, you feel for that child. You feel because it's a baby and that little baby life, and your mothering instincts come out. But like Khalid has said, point blank, period, as War likes to say, that will grow up to be an enemy of ours, because that's the way it's going to be trained. You know, but that's that energy that they've managed to manipulate and weaponize and turn it against us. You know, sisters have far more empathy many times for their children than they do ours. You know, whereas most brothers will sit in the room and be like, screw them kids. You know, some kid shot up some white high school, a black kid's killed. It wasn't a black kid that did it. Let them kill it. I mean, who gives a fuck? Fuck them. And that's more of the war mentality. In order to combat that shit, that we have to, as men, take on, realize, and learn how to work with that more embracing energy, and not let it be pointed at us. You know, so yeah, like I said, it's been done for a lot longer than just in this country. This is an old trick, and that's, for me, that's what's frustrating, is that they keep doing the same game plan over and over again for hundreds of years, thousands. This is what they do, and we keep going along with it, in part because we don't know the history of it. And then now our egos, because we've accepted so much European concepts of individualism and all of that nonsense, we're not aware of the reality that it has been happening. We don't study the past. We don't know about the past. The only past that exists is my past. You know, I was born, time began, and that's the mindset. So we're not able to connect and see that pattern happening over and over and over again. It's the same game. It's not difficult. It's the same game. Like I said, we've accepted this individual, so now we're more interested in what it is we get. You know, sisters with OnlyFans and whatnot, and think that that's not that big a deal. You know, whatever pays the bills, I'm not having sex with them. I'm just, you know, doing all this, you know, because we're disconnected, and it only matters that my individual self is what profits, and that's the part that burns it out. So if we ride along with it, continue that, and allow that weaponization to continue, we'll go right down the toilet with them.
let me go back into why I was saying why I think it's important that we started off with silent weapons for quiet wars. The deal is I started off by describing energy is recognized as the key to all activity on Earth. With that recognition, basically, when we talk about psychological warfare, now what we get into is asymmetrical warfare. And asymmetrical warfare is where basically you create a disadvantage on the battlefield to where one opponent is not at all capable of being able to match its ability to fight a fight against the other opponent. And the concept here, when we talk about asymmetrical warfare, from the standpoint of silent weapons, it is creating that asymmetrical warfare advantage for those that want to control the masses of people. And the reason why I think that that document is so powerful is because it breaks it down from a technological standpoint. I get that the average person can't get that, but if you are able to just take it in and digest it, you will be able to see how that pattern is able to replicate itself throughout natural life and science. In fact, I give you another example of why I think that's important. And again, this is me being geeky. I bought this book here recently called, if y'all can see it, it's called Fractal Holographic Universe, The Matrix Code Revealed by Billy Carson. Fractal, when we talk about fractal geometry and recognizing that, it goes into the aspect of how patterns in nature are constantly exhibit themselves throughout everything. The same thing when you want to weaponize patterns, when you want to weaponize how the human psyche is naturally akin toward a certain type of pattern, then in weaponizing that, you are able to at that point create this asymmetrical warfare advantage. One of the ways in which that was done is through buck breaking. So I kind of disagree with y'all when y'all say the black woman allowed themselves, because as a people, we don't recognize warfare for what it is, and we tend to think that that war actually can be played fairly, and that's the biggest problem with this, is because we're not a warring people as it applies to that. And so from that standpoint, someone who has a devilish nature in regards to how they operate, they're going to be able to create this all day long. And then again, you create this situation where we're perpetually falling for it. And one of the examples of that, and I like to go to this, is in the book 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene, part 4 on the offensive strategies, section 15, is controlling the dynamic, which states, instead of trying to dominate the other side's every move, work to define the nature of their relationship itself. Control your opponent's mind, pushing emotional buttons and compelling them to make mistakes. These mistakes extend to the family's foundational structure and therefore are proportional to controlling the masses and redefining what the household model is for the sake of calibrating the grip of dysfunction needed to maintain controlled chaos. And this is what we're dealing with when we talk about destroying and breaking down the black family. Another key point in that same vein, in the book 33 Strategies of War, part 4 on the offensive strategies, section 15. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the one I just read. Let me go. It was another section here.
Well, while you doing that, I'm keep people entertained. I need to object. Y'all don't say the women allowed themselves to be. That Sykes said that. Don't
Sykes said
in
it.
my words.
All right. Sykes said it. Do you got your? You find your?
Yeah.
Okay,
I got.
Go ahead. I'll come back in when you finish.
All right. So on the 33 Strategies of War, part 5 on the unconventional war, because the one I just talked about was basically conventional war, but now in the unconventional warfare, section 23 states, weave a seamless blend of fact and fiction, which is misperception. Make it hard for your enemies to know what is going on around them. Feed them their expectations and manufacture a reality that matches their desires, and they will fool themselves. Control the people's perception of reality, and you control them. And this is what we get into when we talk about using economics, and we're using economics from the standpoint of natural laws in order to manipulate and control a population. and silent weapons for quiet wars heavily goes into that, and it even breaks it down from the stance of talking about using the modern day. And see, this book was written, or should we say, this document was projected way before we got into the computer age that we're dealing with now. And what's so relevant about this now is if you read that document, especially how it starts off, you would think that this is something that was written when we already had AI developed, but it was not. But because that model operates through fractal concepts, it is able to be applied across the board under any circumstance and application. And that to me is what's important about the weaponization of principles and of natural laws. Because when you're able to weaponize natural laws and natural behaviors against a people, they are not able to see it coming simply because they're doing what they naturally do, but have been tweaked in such to where a reality or a logical sequence is obstructed and now played into the variables of emotional content or emotional content. And by doing so, you disrupt their logical pattern of thinking, which goes into why I talked about critical consciousness. And so remember, when we talk about COINTELPRO, when it basically talk about counterintelligence, the idea of countering the intelligence is where you warp a person's reality to the point to where they're not able to have an intelligent way of life in terms of how they map things out. Hollywood all day long is doing this kind of stuff. And so we fall into this pattern to where we trick ourselves into thinking this is how things ought to be. So that is how you end up with a man who's going to be hiding under the bed from a woman, and how you create a situation to where now the black male, in terms of what they can provide for the household, is less. It has less benefits than what the government can provide. Remember, the Black Panther Party, when we were engaging back in the 60s, when we was engaging self-determination and community control, it was about us being in a position to where we controlled our own destiny. Like Syke talked about, how point number one starts off with freedom, being in control of your destiny. The bottom line is, when you strip that away, and that was a part of counterintelligence and counter-consciousness in terms of how that operation implemented itself, is what you do is you take away the elements of the community being in control of itself. You strip that away. Part of stripping that away goes into, you have to separate the powerful black family. That model was basically adopted from earlier examples of that model when we talked about asymmetric warfare as it applies to buck breaking. Once you're able to do that creation of buck breaking, now the woman has, in a natural state of affairs, is stepping up to the plate. By stepping up to the plate, thinking that this is what I must do and I should be doing, it is creating that cycle now that is able to be repeated in just different scenarios, because you have first went in and destroyed what it means to be a black male. Whether we talk about character assassination or physical assassination. Again, buck breaking as it applied to a slave environment is where white folks would literally, the slave master would go in and rape the strongest black man in front of the family. It meant everything to do it in front of all of the other quote unquote slaves, because when you buck break the strongest slave in front of everybody, then when that slave has to go back to the family, it's going to go back with his head down. It's going to go back defeated. It's going to go back feeling like it's inferior. And every other slave is going to take that in. And now the child is going to grow up thinking that the mother is the strongest thing. And then obviously, just like how he said, the mother is going to be getting constantly raped by the slave master as well. So you create this perpetual pattern. And all we're seeing is that same fractal pattern being reduplicated, just under a different guise. Now I'll let you come in, Syke.
Wait, Syke. Before you start to go in and start throwing jabs and uppercuts and shit, I was correcting Ward's reference, okay? MOI. I got to make sure your references are on point. So I never said I disagreed with the idea. I just want to get the record straight. Yeah.
And the record is straight and respected. Now, yeah, I did say that, Ward, and this is why I said that. because even as we express it now and try to get black women to see what has been done, they're still not listening. They're still perpetrating these ideas. So at some point they have to be held accountable. This is what's going on. And it's not just black women. It's not just, it's women in general, but we'll talk about black women in particular for this particular reason. And I believe that this is why it was done this way. The black woman is the mother of civilization. So they came in through her with a goal to socially automate the entire society. They came in through her and weakened us, and then their forces, all other groups of women wanna imitate her behavior, imitate her style. Then it was easily for it to infect them. That's what I believe took place. But yes, the black woman she's guilty. She needs to be held guilty and accountable for what she's allowed to happen to our communities. And I know in a minute somebody gonna say, well, what is the black man doing? I'll get to him in a minute. I'll get to that nigga in a minute. I use the word intentionally. I'll get to him in a minute. But right now I want to deal with her because of what she has done. She has sung this song. I don't need no man. This is a song she sung. She sung it like it's a platinum hit. She sung this song. I'm a strong black woman. She sung these songs. These songs, she might as well been saying, I want to destroy the black family. She might well been saying that because no man, because what women have to understand is this. This is what women have to understand. No man will maintain attraction to a woman that gives him masculine vibes. Not unless he's gay. I mean, if he's gay, if he's homosexual, he may be attracted to that. He may need that. And I truly believe that this behavior, this mentality is what created these weak men that they steady complaining about. We see it in Willie Lynch's letter. We see it even in William Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, when he talks about it, about the male will be made weak while the female will be made strong. We see it in Mwalamu's book, Mwalamu Barudi's book. Let me read it because it's too long and I'll never remember it. Homosexuality and the Feminization of the African Male. We see it in that book. This book is about this thick, where he break down, and he talked about this years ago, where he breaks down how the black male image will be 100% effeminized, how they'll do it in the movies. As you notice, so many black men wear dresses in movies, how they'll do it in the household. We have women that are so protective of their sons, they make their sons weak. Where you'll have 40-year-old men still living at home with mama, never had their own place, never purchased their own car. And then when mama is no longer there to do it for them, they'll find them another woman that'll do it for them. We call these dudes homosexuals. Because what they'll do is they'll catch them a female who they can go move in her house, eat her food. They get the 3 P's every day. Since Walt wanted to quote Willie D, vagina, a plate, and a place to stay. They'll drive her car, drop her off at work because they don't have a job. They'll drop her off at work. They'll run up her credit. They'll spend her money and then have the audacity to catch an attitude on the days that she don't want to buy them some weed. On days when she just don't feel like purchasing them some weed, they might try to get mad and slap the hell out of her, thinking that they're expressing some level of manhood. But these so-called men, these boys, these men children, was created by these boss broads, these boss babes with these bunnets. These boss babes with these bunnets, they are the ones that's creating these dudes. They are the ones that's raising the gangbangers. They raising the drug dealers. They raising the killers. They raising these effeminized males. And when I say they raising them, because they're so emotional, they have absolutely no emotional control. You don't see it as that because it's when they express it, it's rage. They shooting guns and they screaming. And West Side, that's what they were doing back in the day. They screaming, and you see it as like, oh man, really he's throwing a tantrum. That's what he's doing. He's throwing a temper tantrum. That's what he's doing. And that's why the first thing that happened when he go to prison, he goes to crying for his mama, thinking his mama can save him. When the police are arresting him, he'll tell somebody, go get my mama, because he think his mama has some type of power over the world when she doesn't. She's been protecting him in the house so much, he's falsely believed that mama can protect him from the world, and mama has absolutely no power there. and the black man has absolutely no power with her. And that's what I'm talking. What I mean when I say she's allowed herself to be tricked, and she's allowed this to happen, just like the nigga is allowed this to happen, because the information is not hidden anymore. We're here talking about it on a public forum. It's been talked about for years. E just said this is the same trick they've been playing on us for hundreds of years, and they still falling for it. They still accepting it. They still allowing it. Even when you try to talk to a black woman and try to give her this knowledge, I've tried to share YouTube videos from real conscious sisters that I thought was very powerful, and that a woman can actually start learning some steps to bringing back that queenhood. And you know what the response I get? Can't no other woman tell me nothing about being a woman. This is that negative, hateful, big mouth black woman that we're talking about. So I have to call out. I have to.
And you should. What?
Let me say this, then I'll let you go in, E.
As long as you ain't reading nothing, are you? I'll be here all damn night.
Check this out. The part of the problem we're dealing with still goes back to if our people are not first and foremost, and I got to say this, is not accepting the fact that we are at war, then there is no reason for them to listen to you and come from that perspective. Why? Because if we don't first accept the fact that we're engaging in battle, then all you're doing is giving me conversation, and I'm gonna pin myself against you and fall right back into that trap. And we got to take that and go into the concept of epigenetics. Epigenetics deals with the fact that going into when I talked about buck breaking, when a society or people from a DNA perspective is defeated, that trait is going to be handed down from generation to generation. And it is more easy for that trait to get turned on than it is for the trait of liberation to get turned on, because that is the one that was suppressed and destroyed. And so when we talk about this, we have to realize that when we're right here, right now, hey, like Syke said, it's already out in the open. These things are readily available to us. The average person is going to have their guard up. Why? Because they still, from birth, are taught to not view things from the perspective of realizing that we are under attack. And if I live the majority of my life growing up to adulthood, not accepting the fact that we are at war, not accepting the fact that our people are actually being attacked from birth, from day one, then the mindset that already set in that this is how things are. This is how it should operate. And then when this person comes along who actually is sane, who actually knows what's going on, who actually sees and pierces through the veil of oppression, pierces through the veil of the misinformation and the conspiracies and all that other stuff that went on, tries to break it down, they have been taught from day one to avoid and run away from that strong black male, that strong figure. And that strong figure is alien to them. So they, by design, they have already put themselves in a position of being a strong black man. So when an actual strong black man comes into the picture, now it is a masculine combat situation. That is the only time they recognize being at war, is because they see a strong black man as a threat to them being a strong black man. So all we're talking about is when the two sides collide because of this dysfunction that has been propelled and created through perpetuality of epigenetic destruction of our people. So she sees herself as a strong black man. A real strong black man is confronting her about being out of balance and out of her place. And in everything that she's been brought up to do and operate at this point is now in jeopardy, because she's no longer operating from the standpoint of nurture. She's no longer operating and was from birth has been brought up not operating from a standpoint of balance as it applies to masculine and feminine energy. So what you're dealing with is a dysfunctional, epigenetic, destructive behavior pattern that has not recognized that it was under attack from birth. And so therefore, everything that's happening is happening from that lens. Going back to another book that we have to reference, Kwanzaa Kunjufu, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, goes into how that pattern from birth is brought up into the boys, so that we end up with what kind of going into what Sykes said, a man child, because that's really what we're dealing with. We end up with a man child, and a man child cannot confront a woman, especially can confront a woman acting as a strong black man, because that's what we're dealing with. Most of the dudes are man childs. That's why, like what Sykes said, when you go back and you can look at the videos, different videos of our brothers getting gunned down and brutalized and beat up by the police, and they yell out for their mama. They not yelling out for the father. They yelling out for their mama. That lets you know right then and there that the woman has taken the role of being a strong black man, which means that the man that should have been in the picture is a man child. So therefore, the boy was raised as a man child. The boy doesn't even recognize what a strong black man is. And we can attest to this, that a lot of times as Panthers, when we go out in the community and we try to interact specifically with some street tribes, and we see our generation of our people that has been raised that way. I mean, in fact, Tupac can give you is a good example of why he wrote the song Dear Mama. If you listen to how that song operates, we're talking about environments to where we don't even know what it means. We don't even know what a strong black man looks like. And when we encounter one, if we've been brought up in that environment, most of us are so alienated from that strong black man that it actually is intimidating to the point to where it is my enemy. They are more a nigga, going back to what Psych is going to probably jump into. A nigga is more at home seeing a white man tell him what to do and correct him than an actual strong black man. A nigga is more accustomed to a woman operating as a man than an actual strong black man. Everything has been flipped around and destroyed and twisted to the point to where this is what a household model has become. Again, because the people suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome are not realizing that all of the damage that has been done up until this point is because we are at war and we have been weaponized to destroy ourselves. If I don't view first and foremost, except that I am in a condition of being in battle, which is why I talked about asymmetrical warfare. Because if I don't first and foremost accept that into my psyche, and you don't approach me with the realization that I am at war, and not only am I at war, but I am losing at war, and these are the things that have conditioned you to be the weaker positional person in that war. I have to approach that first and show you how you have been positioned to be losing the war, and that you are in a war. If I don't come with that first, if I don't get your psychic to accept the fact that this is what's going on first, then everything else you're going to present to me is going to be a challenge. And so therefore, I'm going to combat you and rationalize your strong black presence against everything that I've been taught up until this point, which is that whatever you are don't exist in my world. And therefore, how in the hell you going to come at me right now? So I just wanted to make that point. Go in.
No, I think initially when you started talking about this and you quoted that long sermon that you had from that book, you mentioned that what you were reading was typically applied to economics, right? Like economic warfare.
Correct.
So I think, yeah, it may be that it's usually applied to money, finances, but what we're talking about is actually economic warfare. Again, if you understand economics as being not about money, but about resources. And the most fundamental resource in the black family are those in the black family. And if you want to zoom down further, the male and the female for various reasons, and so this is the economics. And because we don't understand the economics, of course, our economic system has collapsed. When we were tricked and hoodwinked and bamboozled into believing this idea of the individual, which is what racism, white supremacy is, that they're the only motherfuckers on the planet who historically have fought for and believed in utmost above all else, the individual. Nobody else did that shit. Everybody else on the planet had a communal sensibility. a sensibility that allowed to see each other as somehow interconnected and not individualized. But now, because we've integrated with these folks and we're able to be in their boardrooms and their bedrooms and the classrooms and everywhere else with them, of course, the individual female is going to look to whatever is satisfying the wants, desires, and needs of that individual, not the community, but her individual self. And so the pursuit and so it's not just what call it bonnet wearing sisters in the hood and whatnot that's doing it. It's Cardi B, it's Suki Yuki or whatever fuck her name is. It's all of these with Sexy Red. I hate it's Sexy Red. It gives Red such a bad fucking name, but this is the economics of it, and that's the most effective way to me at this point, because we are so disconnected. They're reaching through to us through that most essential vibrational mode, sound. Sound is so essential to African people, to all of our cultures. Sound is a fundamental thing. A grunt, a moan, a talking drum. I mean, who the fuck does that? We do that. Every instrument we make talks because it has something to say. So they reach through us with this concept of individuality and this female upliftment. And I'm glad you noted Jawanza Kunjufu. I rarely hear people talk about him, but yeah, he was on it. Francis Cress Wilson used to talk about how back in the 70s, how before too long, you're going to have black males running around in dresses and whatnot. And lo and behold, what do we have? And that's yes, it's very much the feminization of African men in this society, but it had to be that way. And, part of the issue, again, going back to individuality, is that we have beyond being 18 and a male, what is the definition of a man? There fucking is none. There's none. There's no cultural definition. There's no agreed upon, this is what a man's supposed to do. You can get a 12-year-old that says, I'm a man, and he's only a 12-year-old boy, and he's only wrong on the legal status, on the age, on the chronology. So you got a legal definition and a biological definition, but you have no cultural definition of what the expectation is. So we do what the fuck ever and call it what. So that each individual now is allowed to come up with their own definition of what a man or a woman is. So what the hell do you think is going to happen? Everybody's going to be going in their own direction, defining things their own way. And that to me is the ultimate weaponization, because it's the complete opposite of who we are. We define manhood through other men. This is that's what a man is. Oh, okay. If somebody shows you the ocean for the first time, you step back. Oh, that's what an ocean is. Oh, that's what a dog is. But we can no longer say, oh, that's what a man is. We can't say that anymore, because that's not what I call a man. That's not what I define as a man. That's not what I define as a woman. A woman is somebody who says that they're a woman. That bullshit. That's the new definition of womanhood. Just say it and so mote it be. It's this nonsense that they've impressed upon us. And yes, black brothers, sisters, niggas, bitches, we've allowed it to happen. Period. But one of my don't tell nobody. One of my dirty little secrets is I like watching those on the streaming, like on Hulu or whatever. Those shows like those big overweight white girls on there. That shit is hilarious. You know what I'm saying? When you look at it the right perspective and just sit back and laugh at these motherfuckers, right? And it's not cruel, because they could be paid actors. They may be AI. They're far advanced on that shit. I don't know if they're real or not. So I'm just taking it at entertainment value. So deal with it. But just like one of their struggles that they put across on these shows is you at some point have to take responsibility for your actions. But that's only if you want to change. That's the only place it comes into view. If you want to stay, 500 pounds and know that you're about to die with that next donut, that's on you. But if you want to make a change, first you have to understand and acknowledge and accept that you're the one that got yourself into the situation, You're the only one that can get yourself out. That's taking accountability. And we're not taught to do that. We're taught to only be concerned with what it is I think is right, not what somebody else. There's no responsibility to the community. And that's the same thing that we do. It's the same shit. Biggest difference. It's not really different. It's the same. It's just the fucking same shit. We cannot see the error in our ways because of the error in our ways. We refuse to take accountability because we're individuals. So it's the same. White folks, one of the first things they like to do, you talk about slavery, what do they say? One of the first things they like to throw out there, well, I didn't own anybody. You're right. You're stupid, but you're right. I was never a cracked with a whip. We're not talking about you as an individual, but because their mindset justifies only the individual, they can say that and be perfectly right from their cultural vantage point. From our vantage point, we can't let that shit go because that shit is me. It's here right now. We acknowledge that all of the past, present, and future are right here, right now, being acted out in me. You know, there's this, I forget what it's called, but you can essentially online, I need to find the name of that, but you can look up, it's not even really looking up, it's calculated, it's been calculated. Each generation, you can walk back and see how many people it took to create you. In other words, one generation back, it was your mommy and your daddy. So that's two people. Another generation back, it's your grandparents. So that, and math on the fly in my thing, but so essentially it grows exponentially. And so you get back to a couple of 300 years, you're looking at 2,000 or 3,000 people just to make you. So you go back 10,000 years, and that's a lot of people to make just you. And for the African, that's a very real thing. All of those people exist right here, right now, through me. That's a very different vantage point from the European. And that's the mind that we've been given, that all of them, that was then, this is now, that ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm living my best life. Even though living my best life means other people who look just like me, have the same DNA, are related to me, might literally be, straight out related to me, who essentially do and think and feel the same things that I do, are suffering, are dying on a daily basis. But I'm living my best life because I'm an individual. And to me, that's the crux of the situation. And it manifests itself in females in a certain way and in males a certain way because of our essential nature. Yeah, dudes are throwing temper tantrums in the streets, and sisters have been taught how to create a situation, to play their part, because they didn't create it, but to play their part in this role in the creation of somebody who stands in the street, and rather than man up the way another man would tell him, man up and do what you got to do, he's been allowed to act like a baby for all of these years and just lash out at the world because his feelings got hurt, or because he can't figure some shit out, or he can't make ends meet, or whatever it is, can't figure out to do something different. So yeah, it's absolutely weaponized on both ends. And I think at this point in time, most manifestly with females, because that's the side that's been the most under attack, even more so than the outer. The shootings and the slaying, the lynchings and all of that were this physical, but all the time there was this cultural and emotional undercurrent that was developing and that was playing out. So all these years that we've had to watch for the police killing black folks, or whoever killing black folks in the schools and the churches, on TV, wherever people gathered, there was this emotional undercurrent that was being rolled out that has been even more effective, more long-term, but more effective. And so the sisters are playing out now, and that's not just in our community, that's a thing across this country and across the world. It's this female empowerment nonsense that they're throwing out here. So and that's very much a part of it too. Your girl, Kamala, yeah, I said it, and no, I don't do the other guys, so don't even just if you can't understand that, I'm not talking to you. Go get a drink of water. But it's the same thing with Kamala, whether you think she's black or not, she ain't white. So it's the same, that empowerment. Now it's time. They tried it with Hillary. Now it's time for a woman to be president, and women can do rot and all this bullshit. You see it in your movies. Was Marvel and all of them having those female? They want to change Thor, make Thor into a female, a trans, a fucking superhero, rather than tell the story of a female who did something worth having a story being told about her. They want to take the male and turn it into a female. So it's just this utter confusion with the feminine aspect, and what's happened is happening, has yet to be acknowledged by sisters, is just a part of it. It's not disconnected from that shit. It's a part. It's that shit for us. It's the same shit, but it's our version of it. We're going to outdo them. So our version is much more potent than what theirs is, but it's theirs nonetheless.
I got to say this. This is why I like the Panther 48, because the MOI's job is to translate the war code. We started this off with the war code, and sometimes the war code is not as apparently obvious to people. So our Minister Information brother, he came in and broke it down and gave you an analysis of what I was saying, but just on a more digestible level. Go ahead, Syke.
Is that what I did? Oh, okay.
Well, let me say this. And when I was talking about when I was speaking on the female, when I said that I held her accountable first and foremost. And it kind of goes into, when we think about, I think it was Elijah Muhammad that said, when you teach a man, you teach a person. But when you teach a woman, you teach a nation, because the lessons you give to that woman, she's going to pass to the children. And then the children will take those lessons out to the community. So when you understand this dynamic, if this is scientifically sound, and you understand this dynamic, then you understand that whatever you teach the woman, you teach the nation, even if that teaching is a miseducation. And it goes into what War has rephrased as counterintelligence. They have countered our intelligence. There is no concrete definitions for man. Since there is no concrete definitions, they're able to say man is only a social construct. And anybody that feels they're a man and identifies as a man is now a man. That is counterintelligent. It is counterintuitive. There is no such thing as a woman, as a woman, because it is a social construct. And therefore, anybody that feels like a woman and identifies as a woman is a woman, because there is no concrete definition for it now. We used to have rites of passage programs. We had things that boys had to meet, had certain things that boys had to be able to do, certain lessons that they had to learn, and then show that they had an understanding of that lesson, and they watched and studied and followed a man who had passed those same lessons, and then they was given the right to pass on from boyhood to manhood. It was a transition. So we had a concrete definition of what it meant to move into manhood. We had a concrete definition of what it meant to move into womanhood. And matter of fact, shameless plug, if y'all check out Game Theory channel, my personal manhood channel, I have a video there called The Gift of Manhood, where it breaks down a concrete lesson and definitions for what a man is. You know, the roles that he's supposed to play, his responsibilities, and everything that come along with it. And ironically, as y'all all know, I went on a hiatus. He likes to call it vacation. I'm not going to call it a vacation, because a vacation usually means that you took a break from your normal work and went and rested. And I did everything but rest while I was in that state. So I took a hiatus. I took a break in order to go into self and find self. I took this 17-year hiatus, this 1-7, this knowledge God, and learned to build and destroy in the process. And then I came back. But when I took that break, one of the things that happened is that my 4-year-old son became a biological man, a biological adult. But he had no knowledge of manhood. And this is why I did the video, The Gift of Manhood, after seeing him in his 20s. And I hadn't seen him since he was 4. After seeing him in his 20s, and everybody was standing around. All dudes 40 years old was standing around. I mean, literally, there were two 40-year-old males. There was two 20-year-olds, and then there was a couple of teenagers, all males. All of these, most of them was my son's other brothers from their mother, other brothers, and we was all standing around, and they went into talking about manhood. And my son, he said, my oldest boy, he said, I mean no disrespect, Pop, but I don't know what a man is. Ain't nobody ever taught me. So if he was 4 when I left on my hiatus and I came back and he was 21 when I got back, and when we and him first had a chance to talk, he was like 23. He said that he had met no, just like what Ian Ward was just talking about. He literally said he had not come across a man who had those man lessons to teach him anything about manhood. He said he didn't have it. And so I broke it down because ironically I developed a manhood class while I was on hiatus. I did some deep diving, and I developed a manhood class. And in that manhood class, it was given 7 roles. There were 7 roles that a man is supposed to play in his lifetime. There are 5 responsibilities. There are 2 weapons. No, there are 5 drives that drive a man to fulfill his roles. There are 2 weapons that he's naturally born with that helps him fulfill those 5 drives, and there are 4 responsibilities that every man has. And I'm not going to break those down now. If you want them, go to the Game Theory channel and look at the Gift of Manhood video. But when I broke these down, all the men, all the males that were standing there listening to me, true story, they was all like, man, I've never heard it broke down like that. I've never even thought of manhood in that way. Man, I ain't never heard anything like that. We do not have those concrete definition of manhood. And part of it is because you sorry niggas are not there raising your children because you don't know how to. And many of us have been, as War said, you have to recognize that we're at war. And the society has intentionally removed you out of the way of being able to be a man and left our women. And this has been going on for at least the last, oh my God, this has been going on for about 60 years now. This has been going on for about a good 6 decades now. Because before this, you had things like the UNIA moving through the community showing what manhood and womanhood looked like. You had the Nation of Islam moving through the community showing you what manhood and womanhood looked like. You had the Black Panther Party moving through the community showing you what manhood and womanhood looked like. And around the time that they effectively eradicated the Black Panther Party, and that revolutionary spirit was moved out of the community, and the gangster, the pimp, and the hustler became the new symbol of role models to walk through the neighborhood. That manhood model and that womanhood model was properly eliminated. That's around the time welfare, the crack boom, all of that hit, and we've been downward spiraling ever since then. And that is what we've been dealing with. That's what you got to understand. Those are silent weapons for quiet war. Those are not bullets coming out at you. Those are not bombs being dropped on you. They attack you in your own mentality, and it's so beautiful. Boy, it's so psychologically beautiful when you understand it, that then you start turning the guns on yourself. You start murdering and killing yourself. You start doing it to yourself, and now you can't blame anybody. You can't say the white man did it because they're looking at another black hand pulling that trigger. It's diabolically beautiful when you understand it and think about it. And I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna get back to my point. I went on a little tangent right then. I apologize, but let me get back to the point I was trying to make. But when you understand what Elijah Muhammad was trying to teach, you understand that they came in through the female and they perverted the female. And even now, she doesn't even understand her role. We're taught there are no gender roles. There are 2 major gender roles that has to be played and acted out in the cosmic design of God. There are 2 gender roles. There is strength and there is beauty. Male and female. Man is supposed to play out the part of strength. Woman is supposed to play out the part of beauty. And not like y'all thinking. I know what everybody's listening is thinking. Automatically the first thought. Strength is physical strength. Might. Power. I can take you and throw you through a window. Beauty is how sexy or visually appealing a woman looks. But beauty is actually harmony. It's balance. It's actually ma'at. That's what beauty is. Beauty is defined by symmetry, and that's what Ma'at is. Ma'at is about balance, about harmony. Beauty is not what a woman necessarily looks like. When we say a woman looks good, we call her a 10, a dime. Well, we know that the completeness of anything is 100%. 10 is only 10% of 100. So that 10 is only 10%. What she looks like is only 10% of what her beauty is. That other 90% is about how balanced her thinking and her emotions are. Her ability to take in knowledge and convert that knowledge that she's been given into wisdom. That's what that beauty truly represents. If you really want to know what beauty is, look up the concept of ma'at. Look up that concept. Look up that idea, the philosophy behind it. That's what a woman is really supposed to be. That's real beauty. And strength is not just physical might. Again, it's only physical might is necessary, and it was embedded in man to be the physically superior, to be that strength, to protect, to fight, to go to war, to defend. He has to have that ability, but that's only like 10% of what real masculine strength is. Real masculine strength is the ability to produce infrastructure, the actual ability to produce a foundation, to manifest knowledge. That's what real strength is, the ability to think and guide, to develop and to mentor. That's what strength is. And when we are really in the state that we're really supposed to be in, then we're able to create the family. Then we're able to create the community. Our stuff was threw off track intentionally. This was done intentionally, and it's going to take real intent for us to get it back together. I held the female accountable for a reason, not because I want to dog her out and I think it's all on the woman, but they came in through you to destroy us. Now you have to make a decision that you're going to stop allowing it to happen. Because as long as you allow it to happen, your man is going to constantly fall. And I use the symbolism, and I'm gonna pass the mic out to this one. I use the metaphor of Adam and Eve in the beginning for this reason. The science teaches us, the archetype, the spiritual science teaches us that you go in through the female because she is that part that you can project into, and whatever you give to her, she's going to give birth to. So if you project the wrong ideas into her, she's going to give birth to that wrong idea. She has the ability to then go to the male and then subvert his logical thinking. You don't appeal to logic to get a false ideal across, because logic is going to mathematically deconstruct that false idea. You appeal to the emotion, the feminine aspect, to get that false ideal across. Once you get emotional about something, you stop thinking logically. And I know E likes to combat me on this, but you stop thinking logically, and then the logic is easier to go with the idea because you're emotional. Think about the last time your girl broke your heart, how you couldn't think. I don't care how many times somebody around you that was thinking logically was trying to break it down to you, trying to explain it to you, trying to tell you what you needed to do, and you were like, "Man, I know you right, man, you right," and then you turn around and go do the opposite of it anyway because you was operating in that. E, all of us, all men have done it, We've all done it. And that's why we got to get that balance back, man. That's why we got to get it. I can honestly say this. And it's not all women that have gone astray. It's most of them. But I've known a woman that has started learning how to bring herself back, and if she can do that, I think all women can do that. And that's where the responsibility comes in. Women are going to have to start bringing themselves back. And that's the only way we're going to bring our men back. And I'm going to let E go, because I'm going to say one more thing about men in a few minutes. But go ahead, E.
No, I don't know where y'all keep getting these misunderstandings. But yes, I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, what you said essentially is the same that I said earlier in talking about Cardi B and music and entertainment. That emotion, that energy is what it is. That's easier to manipulate. So it's the same thing all over again. That's the aspect, which is real funny, that as we projected to build pyramids and to create civilization, she gave birth, we created it through her. It's now at the state where it's being in its final days, so to speak, in its most, I don't know, its greatest issue, its greatest trial and tribulation, or whatever you want to call it right now, is through her. So we very may well be on the I guess metaphorically, the destruction of civilization, which is the yin and the yang of it. She is the destructive energy. So it makes sense that destruction would enter our communities, our homes, our civilizations through the destructive aspect of that balance. And that's some real fundamental shit. Men build shit because we're concerned with the functionality. That's the strength of it. How is it going to hold up? She comes along and beautifies it, balances it out. What in some instances that we build a building, she comes and puts flowers and pretty flowers out front and pretty murals and pictures on it to make it look good. And that's just a real rudimentary basic expression of the idea, but it's the same throughout. You can have a good idea, but it needs to be balanced. It needs to be tweaked to be its most effective in order to give birth to what it is you want to give birth to. And that's essentially, this is emotionalism run amok, which again is them, because the emotion is really only concerned with itself, with its own self-preservation and expression, its own movement. And that's part of the male's job, is to help balance, or not balance it out, but give direction to all of that. So again, it's the same idea, it's the same game. They've been running for years, that we still have refused to take responsibility, male and female at this point, absolutely female, for our role in it. Again, in large part because of our egos, because of that individual, because of that need to protect and keep all of the bad stuff away, and to protect that individual identity that we've had slid in on us. I forget what else I was going to say.
Hey, I want to bring up another book real quick by Dr. Africa. It's called The Handbook for Raising Black Children, a comprehensive holistic guide for parenting skills and problems controlling teenagers. That book right there starts off and goes into exactly.
Show me the front of that book.
It's
the front.
Yeah, that's the front. There's like 2 or 3 different versions in terms of the cover of that book. So when you go online, you might see it, but it might be a different one. Because I ended up ordering this book twice because I thought it was a different book, because it was worded different on the front cover. But when you open it up, look at the table of contents, it was the same book, just had a different cover. But basically, in Dr. Africa, he's breaking down all of these things by first exposing you to the symptoms, and then going into using different African principles in order to combat these mentalities that we have basically been coerced and tricked into, again, going back to the epigenetic destruction that is being played out. So the one thing I want to throw out there, and this to me really hits home in terms of solution building that everybody that we've been talking about. When the word accountability was used, when E and Psych used the word accountability, that's the bottom line. I can't form any argument when we talk about it from the standpoint of saying accountability. The bottom line is, if we want things to change for the better, for the sake of dealing with self-determination, we must first deal with accepting the fact that we have to be accountable. That basically is a separation between somebody that is going to be a liberator versus somebody that's going to maintain a state of victimization. If we want to continue to be the victims, boo-hoo, then we're not going to take accountability. But if we want to stand up and fight the fight and accept the fact that we at battle and pick up the goddamn gun, physical, mental, spiritual, psychological, then, and be the liberator, then you have to accept accountability. Accepting accountability is where we must be. As Panthers, and on the Panther 48, we're talking about accountability. So if we're talking about accountability, then everything everybody's saying in terms of holding fault at this point in time is absolutely true, undeniable. So don't even go into the comments and try to challenge what we're saying, because the word accountability has to come first. If you use the word accountability, when you get ready to say something negative about what we're saying in regards to calling out dysfunction for what it is, first put the word accountability up there. Then decide if you want to come in with a negative comment. Because if you're not going to deal with accountability, then you can say all kinds of negative stuff. Then you can sit there and place and point and complain and cry all you want in the comments. But if you want to be real about being a liberator, if you want to be real about changing the conditions, about actually addressing the solution, as opposed to just simply covering up and suppressing symptoms. If you want to deal with it from that standpoint, the word accountability has to come first. Within Panther formations, we have what we call the 3Ds. The 3Ds first starts off with defining, then it goes into developing, and then it goes into defending, right? So if we as a people are starting with a position of defining who we are, then we have to use a definition that applies to us being in a position of liberating ourselves. Because right now, we're operating off a definition of being a victim, which is why it is fair and right to use the word nigger in that concept, because that is what is being operating right now from a mass level in regards to where we are. We're operating from the nigger zone. So if we choose to operate from the war zone, like we started this discussion out, although it may have been misconstrued or not understood by everybody, we started from the war zone. We started from a vantage point of somebody giving you a breakdown of being on the battlefield as a reporter on the battlefield of what I'm seeing happen. So as a war correspondent, I'm telling you what's happening. You may not recognize or you may not be able to digest that. Our minister information came in and broke it down and made it plain and simple. Brother Sight came in and dissected even further and called it out for what it is in terms of us having accountability. So the bottom aspect of all that is you're getting three perspectives. You're getting 3 points of views. And one of these three got to touch you in a way that hurts to the point to where you realize that work has to be done as an individual, as a family unit, and as a collective. This is the job of the Panther 48. This is the job of Black Panthers, period. Accept it, hold yourself accountable, move on, get over. And it's super important here because this concept of silent weapons for quiet wars was first kind of like revealed to the general public in a book called Behold the Pale Horse. And in that book, it gives a copy of this document. Now, the document is primarily addressing economics, but today what we want to do is use that as a jump off point to talk about broken family structures, the black family in particular. But let me just read an excerpt in regards to the silent weapons for quiet wars. It starts into going talking about energy is recognized as the key to all activity on Earth. Natural science is a study of the source and control of natural energy, and social science, theoretically expressed as economics, is the study of source and the control of social energy. All science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge, the ends is control. Beyond this remains only one issue: who will be the beneficiary? So the document is about basically the corporate elite and the international bankers as being justifiable for creating that. And it goes in to further to say that the interest of the future world order, peace and tranquility, was decided to be probably wage a quiet war against the American public, with the ultimate objective of prematurely shifting the natural and social energy, which is wealth, of the undisciplined and irresponsible many to the hands of the self-disciplined, responsible, worthy few. In order to implement this objective, it was necessary to create, secure, and apply new weapons, which in turn out were a class of weapons so subtle and so sophisticated in their principle of operation and public appearance to earn for themselves the name silent weapons. The objective of economic research, as conducted by international bankers and the industries of commodities, is established of the economy, which is totally predictable and manipulatable. In order to achieve total predictable economy, the lower class element of society must be brought under the control and be housebroken, trained, and assigned a yoke and long-term social duties from the very early age before they have the opportunity to question reality. In order to achieve such conformity, the lower class family must be disintegrated by a process of increasing preoccupation of the parents and the establishment of government operated daycare centers from the occupationally orphaned children. And by that, what they're basically talking about is you keep the adults in a working environment to where basically their entire time is spent trying to support a household. Therefore, nobody is in the household because now we're talking about a man and a woman having to be in a workforce. So the child is basically put in a position of where they're getting schooling through a public educational system that's basically designed to create another generation of workers. So with that, it says the quality of education given to the lower class must be of the poorest sort, so that the mote of the ignorance isolating the inferior class from the superior class is as it remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have very little of any hope of extracting themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery is essential to maintaining some measure of social order, peace, and tranquility for the ruling upper class. And a descriptive aspect of what it means to have a silent weapon, it says it shoots situations instead of bullets, propels data processing instead of chemical reaction, originates from bits of data instead of grains of gunpowder, from a computer instead of gun, operates by a computer program instead of a marksman, under the orders of a banking magnate instead of a military general. It makes no obvious explosive noises, causes no obvious physical or mental injuries, and does no obvious interference with anyone's daily social life. Yet it makes an unmistakable noise, causes unmistakable physical and mental damage, and unmistakably interferes with the daily and social life of the people. Unmistakable to the trained observer, one who knows what to look for. The public cannot comprehend this weapon and therefore cannot believe that they are being attacked and subdued by such weapon. So, under the logistics aspects of acquired weapon, it goes into talking about the artificial womb. Within artificial womb, it says the objective of the artificial womb is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, and provide a shelter for the evolutionary process of growth and maturity, to provide security for freedom, and to provide a defensive protection for the offensive activity. This is equally true on both general public and the elite. However, there is a definitive difference in the way each of these classes go about the situation, the solution of the problem. In doing so, it breaks down, and this is kind of where we're going to deviate and go into our discussion. It talks about the concept of enforcement factors of the silent weapon. Factor number one, as in every social system approach, stability is achieved only by understanding and accounting for human nature, action-reaction patterns. A failure to do so can be made and usually is disastrous. As in human social schemes, one form or another of intimidation or incentive is essential to the success of the draft. Physical principles of action and reaction must be applied to both internal and external subsystems. Factor number two, talking about the father. The man of the household must be housebroken to ensure that the junior, which is the son, will grow up with the right social training and attitude. The advertisement media, etc., is engaged to see that the father to be is pussy whipped, and this is the words that it says, pussy whipped, before or by the time he is married. He is taught that he either conforms to the social niche cut out for him, or his sex life will be hobbled and his tender companionship will be zero. He is made to see that the woman's demand for security more than a logical principle of honorable behavior. By the time his son must go to war, the father, which it says has jelly for a backbone, will be slim, will slam a gun into the junior's hand before the father will risk the the censor of his peers, and make a hypocrite of himself. Factor number 3 talks about the mother. The female element of human society is ruled by emotion first and logic second. In the battle between logic and imagination always wins. Fantasy prevails, material instinct dominates, so that the child comes first and that the future comes second. The woman with the newborn baby is too starry-eyed to see a wealthy man cannon fodder for a cheap source of slave labor. And the woman must, however, be conditioned to accept the transition of reality when it comes too soon. And then factor number 4 goes into the junior, which is basically the child, the son, and says the emotional pressure of self-preservation during the time of war, and the self-serving attitude of the common herd that has a opinion to avoid the battlefield. If the junior can be persuaded to go, is all of the pressure finally necessary to propel Johnny off to war. So basically what it's talking about is creating this ego type of mentality that in order to prove that they're a man, the son must be prepared to go to war for the country and do so blindly. And that, in going back on what we talked about the father's position is basically to give up the son to the government for the sake of that patriotism. And then the mother's perspective is basically talking about how logic is pushed to the background and material possession and imagination is the foreground, and it conditions the father to do so. All of these different factors that we're talking about here are coming from an economic standpoint. But when we talk about this deeper, and this is what we get into now, in dealing with the Black family, it creates a situation that on top of racism and that's coupled with racism and poverty, to where we're dealing with now single parent households, because you have to go into that a step deeper in order to continue to break the cycle that will create a people that are able to survive and the people that are able to deal with self-determination. But the important aspect of talking about this in leading into the discussion with silent weapons for quiet wars is to talk about how there is a actual working blueprint of an economic imperialist system that is put in place by international bankers to see to it that everybody operates within a certain scheme to help create a perpetual cycle that we're dealing with, of how the people condition themselves for the downfall, how the people condition themselves to be operating as individuals as opposed to having a collective consciousness.